What's up, Nerd Crew? Nurdie J here, and today we are finally going to do the final episode of Transformers in Need of New Figures. So, without further ado, cue the intro! Starting off this list, and with Siege, is going to be the Battle Master Rung. Rung did not transform into the scanner mode, I believe in IDW, and he is way too small for what he is supposed to be. I think he is supposed to also have a scooter. I don't know much about this character, but I do know, at least physically, he looks wrong. He doesn't look like the IDW that he's supposed to represent. So I would say he would just need a new figure altogether. Either core class or deluxe would be fine. Next up is Spinister. Spinister is a really good toy on its own. I think where they faltered was the complex transformation of his legs, which leads to it easily breaking pieces or just shearing off the lower calves in general. What I would say is they re-release it, maybe under slightly different tones of the colors that are represented here, and that they make the legs out of solid plastic and just paint over them with the for the windows at least. Not only that, pack him in with his two Target Masters that came in with Siege as well as a gift set, because I believe it was the one that came with Skywarp. I can't remember the character's name, but it's his the Spinister's Target Master. But essentially, that was the only way you could get him in Siege, and it would represent it would provide you another take on getting that Battle Master that you weren't able to get. So, Galaxy Force Optimus Prime, or Cybertron Optimus Prime is how I like to see it, needs a better figure. First of all, I don't know what they were thinking with the small version of Optimus Prime. He does not remotely look like the figure of the original Cybertron Optimus Prime. And the combined mode, though looking okay, is heavily parts forming that wasn't originally part of it. Like, you have to include these weird shoulder pad pieces that aren't correct, and essentially the legs are not right. It just doesn't look good, in my opinion. Now, the complete alt mode, complete with the trailer-esque thing, that does look fine. It's just that he is not represented well, in my opinion, as a fan of Cybertron. Up next is the Amazon exclusive Slam Dance. This figure, I don't know what they were trying to go for. The only thing that I would say they got accurate, and this is a physical version of accuracy, not what the original toy represented, but this is the first time that Slam Dance's jet actually became the head shoulder area, while the tank became the legs. That said, even though it looks good in robot mode, and the alt modes aren't that bad, this is not what he's supposed to turn into. The thing is that he is supposed to turn into two cassettes that fit inside a blaster. Well, what they decided to do, for some odd reason, just to get a repaint out of flywheels, was to just turn him into an Autobot and paint it into this, and it just does not work. So for the fans that are not into, like, Dr. Wu, should get a version of their childhood toy that actually represents the actual characters, not this abomination. Next up is the two Fembots, Greenlight and Lancer. The thing is that these guys never had alt modes, fine. But why are they using the exact same tooling of the original Chromia mold that's been slightly redone into the Power Core Combiners looking thing? And the thing is that it does not work. It's just so shell heavy, and the transformation is insanely boring at this point for either of the characters, and they could have came up with unique alt modes, not the same slim vehicle thing that just doesn't work. And it only worked in one case, in my opinion, and that was Moonracer. But even then, it was very hit and miss for that figure themselves. And to round off the Siege portion of this list is going to be Cybertron Defense Hotshot. Their first attempt at the Unicron Trilogy Hotshot in any form, and especially the first take on a Cybertron edition of Hotshot. Thing is just totally bonkers on why they decided to do this. Yes, he's an armored vehicle, but not the right kind. The proportions are totally whack for the character. Where's all the extra weaponry? And honestly, I did not like the Siege Hound mold in the first place, and just doing this through Hotshot just really feels like a detriment to the character, and one of my favorite characters representations of the character in Cybertron. Moving on to Earthrise, I'm surprised that Hasbro hasn't done this yet, but we need a new figure of Lifeline, or Paradrone Medic, whichever one you want to call. The thing is that this toy just flat out sucks. I don't even know why they designed it the way they did with originally with Earthrise RC and then just repainted it with Lifeline. But since they redid RC for Studio 86, just straight up repaint it into Lifeline, and I think a lot of people would be more happy than just being stuck with this current version. Following that disaster of a figure, we're moving on to what is assumed to be Generation 2 Megatron, using the Earthrise Megatron G1 version mold, and this doesn't even remotely look like Megatron from Generation 2, all except for the paint scheme. He doesn't have the barrel chest, the legs are really badly proportioned, and he comes with a fusion cannon, which the original didn't, because the original version had his fusion cannon or something similar to it on his shoulder, and then, you just got this weird tank turret piece on his back. It just looks horrible in my opinion, because I'm a huge G2 fan, and this is a pale, pathetic attempt on a G2 Megatron, in my opinion. Two things that I think was a detriment to Rotorstorm was, first of all, the size. He should have been a Voyager at the very least, maybe a small leader, and then on top of that, his helicopter mode is not right. He is supposed to have two tail sections that combine and have a bridge to it. And what they did was just take a pretty bad Spinister mold. Even though the looks are good for Spinister, it doesn't work for Rotorstorm, and they just shoehorned him in to the mold. And essentially, him being a deluxe, it just doesn't work because he just doesn't have the mass or the gravitas to him. And then, essentially, they never attempted, as far as I'm aware, to make a Machine Wars Sandstorm on top of that. If they started off with a new helicopter mold, not only could they do those two, but they could probably figure out some GoBot reference or something with it, too. This one's going to be a little bit of an odd one, and that is going to be Ravage. The thing is that the Earthrise Ravage, or this War for Cybertron Netflix edition of Ravage, did technically get a repaint, but that was it. I think it needs to be retooled so that essentially the legs are not just spindly little breakable pieces. The neck is too thick because they have to incorporate the peg system for some reason, and the panels on the legs themselves are just too bulky. What I feel like they should have done was actually make some of the panels transform into the legs. And then also just retool the neck piece so that there is no bulkiness that needs the peg system. So it can form a stupid shield thing. So essentially, yeah, it just needs the legs and the neck definitely need to be retooled. They can keep the core body, keep the head design. I think those work. It's just they need to retool pretty much everything else. And rounding off Earthrise is going to be a twofer, kind of. the thing is that they need to redo Laserbeak and also the United Buzzsaw. They use the exact same mold, so that's why it's going to be an Earthrise twofer, because Laserbeak came out first. Thing is that they need to definitely rethink that backpack that Laserbeak has. It's just this block. It's an undescript block that's a carryover from the Siege mold, which kind of worked for Siege, not really, but at the same time, they didn't even try to redesign it into the tail fins and vent. Or give him the, with Laserbeak, give him the ruby blasters that he's supposed to have. I know it's a tiny feature, but at the same time, I think it just makes it look bad. So if they could just redesign that backpack, or even a third party, since it's just a friction hinge, just a third party redoing it, that would be great. And then on top of that, just recolor the legs, because the legs, I feel, just need to be painted black. So moving on to Kingdom, the biggest one that I have an issue with is Rodimus Prime. The trailer is way too long. The cab, if you want to call it a cab, is trying to shoehorn Hot Rod into it, which isn't necessarily bad, but since it doesn't turn into Hot Rod in robot mode, then what's the point? Because they shoehorned Hot Rod into the mold, then essentially they didn't give enough leniency, space, something. They didn't tool it right for the cab to fit into the trailer, so you have this really, really long nose of a trailer, and then in the back of the thing is just a spoiler, and it's not accurate by any means, and then the tooling is just way too heavy, in my opinion. He's not a smooth enough transformation, smooth enough design, mold-wise. And then, essentially, yeah, it's just not a good figure. I'm in hopes that Studio Series 86 will correct this, and still make him probably a commander, or since he's got a simple transformation for the most part, maybe make him a big leader, like they did Grimlock or something, because he is supposed to be roughly the same size as Optimus, and then, you know, it's just the trailer just needs to be shortened for the most part, so I think it just needs a heavy retool. Up next is Trax. The thing is with Trax, I just have one major problem with him, and that is his leg transformation. It is not a clean transformation. It really feels like you have to fuse the feet when you're rotating the feet panel around. It really feels like you have to fuse it through the thighs, and there's just not enough clearance as far as I can tell. I even looked at the instructions, and the instructions aren't that clear, and so essentially it's just a really bad design in the transformation scheme. And then you have the floating ankle situation, because they decided to put the ankle thing, because in order to transform it correctly, they decided to put the ankles on the side of the foot instead of on the top. And so when you're just standing him straight, he's just got nothing in between his calf panel and his foot. So, yeah, they just need to come out with a little bit of better one, in my opinion, that has actual better transformation in the feet. Rat Trap is too small. Rat Trap has weird arm hinges, shoulder hinges, I should say. And third, Rat Trap's robot mode doesn't look right, because it's got the back panels are missing the bottom legs, and I know what they were trying to do was trying to figure out how to get the robot mode feet to be the back legs, but that makes them way too bulky in the beast mode. The rat doesn't look like Rat Trap either. He kind of looks like a little field mouse. And so they just need a total redesign. Maybe make him a small deluxe like they did Cliff Jumper, and so they can put the tooling, and the core class was just a bad mistake in my opinion. Even though the robot mode, the details look fine enough, it's just pretty much the transformation and the feet in general and the shoulders just need a redesign. This was kind of, for me, low-hanging fruit because this was Transmutate from Kingdom. They were shoehorned into the Paleotrix mold, and it kind of works in a way because they were not a complete Transformer during Beast Wars. They didn't even transform technically, but the design, if you just go with the stock design, doesn't look like Transmutate except for the head. If you recombine it, essentially, it does work a little bit better, but it's highly, highly unstable. And so, and what I mean by unstable, parts don't want to stay together because the tolerances aren't quite right, and it just cannot stand to save its own life. And so I think what it should have been, instead of being a transforming toy, should have been in the RED line. Because that would have been great for the characters that never did have alt modes in canon. And so essentially this one needs to be redone if they're going to keep the transformation scheme and its design. I think I like the fossilized idea. It just needs to actually look like Transmutate instead of this. To round off Kingdom will be Beast Wars the Second or Beast Wars 2 Skywarp. Thing is that it does look okay in both modes, so I don't have a problem with the choice that they just redid Air Razor into Skywarp. The thing is that it kind of makes you realize that you kind of are missing the whole combination form to make Magnaboss. And so essentially what I would like to do is a retool of it where it can combine, kind of in the tradition of Magnaboss's combination, and make it a Titan. Since Titans have gotten smaller recently, I think you can also fit like a Voyager Ironhide or Statin. And then you can also include Lio Jr., and then you can just easily repaint it or change the plastic colors so you can have Beast Wars Silverbolt. You can have Beast Wars Prowl, first edition of Prowl, and then Ironhide. So, I think it would work, if they could figure out retool it so it can combine, and then you just add the other two and just sell it as a Titan. For Legacy Evolution, we have Shadow Striker. The issue with Shadow Striker is that she is not from the Cyberverse cartoon. She is actually from a BotCon exclusive. And the only thing that makes her the Cyberverse version of the character is the head sculpt. The alt mode, the robot mode, is entirely the pre-tool of Sideburn, and therefore it's the BotCon edition. And they didn't even attempt to recolor a leg to represent what she looked like in the cartoon. They didn't give her a chunky options because she was essentially just a piecemeal in the cartoon of Cyberverse. And so essentially, they just straight up lied to us. And to round off the bulk of this list is Transformers Legacy United Cyberverse Slipstream. The thing is they just took and repainted Windblade and then gave her a really bad Starscream-esque head. In the cartoon, she's not even the same jet. She is, I think, just the regular Seeker mold. Just slimmed down to represent the feminine version of the Seeker mold. And they just didn't do it at all justice. Just like Shadow Striker, in my opinion. And so that's why she's on this list. And finally, our bonus segment. This is more of a bonus/honorable mention, and this is going to be Legacy United Browning. Now, the thing is that Browning is more of a throwaway accessory in this case for the Squeeze Play toy. Now, what I would have liked to see is like a core class, or probably somewhere around the core class actually, and essentially make it the brown edition of, like in the cartoon instead of the silver toy of Browning, and essentially retool it so that it looks more like a squirt gun. So it doesn't even look like a real gun, but make it look like a squirt gun, and essentially change the transformation probably too, but keep the aesthetics of what makes Browning Browning. And essentially, I think that would curb most of the issues with the toy being a gun. So essentially, I would just love to see this as an actual figure instead of just a throwaway accessory. And finally, as the second and final bonus, and to finish off this list, is the Japanese exclusive Generations Thrilling 30 Go Shooter. Now, I would just like to see Go Shooter just totally redone. Make it a Headmaster still, just that make it a better version of whatever the heck this toy was, because I never liked the original. I think it was Nightbeat mold, or also it was the Bumblebee mold, whichever one came first technically in that line. I just didn't like the transformation scheme or any of it. And so essentially I would just like to see it totally redone and then repainted back into Siren. And so essentially that Minerva would have a partner from the same series too. I hope that you enjoyed this list, this series in fact, because I do have others in the pipeline for other lists like this. If you stayed to the end, I really appreciate it. It really does help the channel out. And if you could, like, subscribe, share if you feel like it too. And I've been Nurdie J for Nurdie Boyz, and I'll catch you next time.